So we filmed a lot. I mean, they got the hard drive and they had their guys go through it as, they do when you got a big production like this. They didn't even see anything. So they have these, I don't know, one, two, maybe four different editors from HBO. And then they throw together whatever they think are the stories. And we could have had 3 seasons from what was on that hard drive, because there were so many crazy things that happened in those first 3 years.
Let's Shoot with Pete Chatmon is a podcast on directing for anybody that's, quite simply, ever watched anything. Visit PeteChatmon.com to get your official podcast merch, hoodies, hats, jackets, mugs, and other swag, and learn more about your host.
All right. What's up, people? Welcome to episode 53 of Let's Shoot with Pete Chatmon, starring Mr. Garrett McNamara, also known as G-Mac. Now, before we get into Garrett and tell you what you'll be in a treat for, gosh, sometimes you start talking and you lose your vocabulary and you don't know where you want to go with it. And I imagine actors go through that all the time. That happens often when I sit down here. It's currently Monday, October 16th. As you know, these interviews were recorded a little while ago, so I hop back in and do a quick intro to bring folks up to speed. And what's going on as we sit here on a Monday afternoon in LA? Well, episode 51 with Paris Barclay and 52 with Reggie Rock Bythewood have been going well. Getting a lot of positive response from people. I feel like the gems that both of those brothers have dropped have been just monumental for anybody learning to see what it's like to be a director, what the path can be, but also like kind of take away how different personalities and kind of soft skills can help you navigate being on set. That's one of the favorite things that I enjoy about talking to so many different people on the pod, because I just get a different sensibility of like how people move through the space of a TV or a film production. But since our last episode with Reggie Rock Bythewood, news-wise, the talks have stopped between AMPTP and SAG-AFTRA. No one's in the room, and I'm not here to speculate, but what folks were kind of expecting and hoping was that the fact that you had, Ted Sarandos in there, Donna Langley, Bob Iger, and I'm sorry, there's a fourth executive that slips my mind at the moment, but the hope was that it would mirror what happened with the writer's strike, where when those 4 executives got in the room, the talks kind of ramped up, sped up, because the decision makers were there and it wasn't the AMPTP saying what those people would or would not agree to because they were in the room. So hopefully deals will be forthcoming. A fair deal. Each different union has different concerns, obviously. But what I can say is that on the flip of that industry talk and that stalemate, more and more shows have been reaching out to me personally. Meetings are being had. Some shows are being booked with hard dates that are in early 2024. And so that to me means that people are rolling the dice or feeling very confident that an agreement will be made by, folks are saying Thanksgiving is the time that would allow, but I mean, what is happening would allow production to begin for the start of 2024 in January or so. But, with the conclusion of the writer's strike and the ratification of the deal, the writers are already back in the room on many shows. Friends that are showrunners I've spoken to directly, and they are back in the room. So they're bringing 5 months of creativity and probably fresh brains that are ready to iron out plot and character and dialogue to the table. And I hope it'll bode well for a very interesting season of TV shows coming back next year. So that's what we hope for. But today, we will be getting into episode 53 with my man Garrett McNamara. And this is an interesting one because he reached out to me and said, hey, I'd love to be on the podcast. And I was aware of him from having watched The 100-Foot Wave. For those of you who have not, check it out. It's on Max. It's awesome. Garrett is a professional big wave surfer. And in the documentary, he's on the quest for the 100-foot wave. And that quest takes him to Nazaré, Portugal. Now, that documentary, while Garrett is a director in his own right and a surfer and just a kind of Renaissance man, the doc itself, it's a series of, I believe, 5 episodes. And it's directed by Chris Smith, who directed Tiger King and Fire, one of the 2 Fire Festival documentaries, among other things. And the 100-Foot Wave is up for a bunch of primetime Emmy Awards for 2023. It's nominated for Outstanding Sound Editing for a nonfiction or reality program. It is nominated for Outstanding Sound Mixing for a nonfiction program, single or multi-camera. It is nominated for Outstanding Documentary or Nonfiction Series. It is nominated for Outstanding Picture Editing for a nonfiction program. 2 more, y'all, 2 more. It's nominated for Outstanding Writing for a nonfiction program. And lastly, it is nominated for Outstanding Cinematography for a nonfiction program. So there ain't nothing else you can nominate that shit for. I mean, it is well accoladed and the critics like it, but it's just an amazing story. It's the kind of thing you watch and it's almost like, if you wrote this, it would be bad writing. But the things that happen in real life are so cinematic, so poetic, and really push storytelling to the limit, particularly when you have folks pushing themselves to the limit and trying to find that 100-foot wave. So without further ado, let's dive in to episode 53 of Let's Shoot with Pete Chatmon with my man, Garrett McNamara.
Roll sound.
Speed.
The interview. Take 1.
So I wanted to ask you about this statement that CJ, your brother-in-law, right, has in the documentary, as much as humanly possible. You said that was something that you say a lot. And I felt like maybe that's something that transfers into a lot of what you do. Like, what do you mean by that? Or what does that mean to you?
Well, it means just giving it your all and actually putting the time in and doing everything possible to get the best outcome.
Mm-hmm.
To get the furthest you can get in any experience, the furthest along, to maximize your contribution, for lack of a better word, when it comes time and you gotta show up, be ready, put as much as humanly possible, put that effort into the possibility of being as good as you can be.
Mm-hmm. Does that come into play more by virtue of like what you do with your life and the risk perhaps of big wave surfing? Or is it, would that apply to anything that you do?
I mean, it's usually very serious when I utilize it for preparing for big waves. Like, come on, man. But in everyday life, I definitely utilize that term. And it's like reaching full potential, do your best, whatever you do your best to reach full potential, or just don't do it. I mean, don't do it halfway.
Yeah. So, I feel like folks can do their own homework. They can watch the documentary and we'll talk about that too, of course. But I would offer, like, if there's any, I know you've done a lot of press. If there's anything like you feel like doesn't get touched upon or a tangent you want to go on, like, feel free to take it there. Cause I think that's what's probably most interesting and probably new for you to kind of not have to like hit the same answers all the time that I know are often.
Well, you already came with a totally different question than I've ever been challenged. So that was cool. Thank you.
Thank you, man. Thank you for being here.
Challenge answer.
You started surfing at 11. Like, what brought you to the sport? And what was it about it that you loved?
Well, when we moved to Hawaii. We had come from Berkeley, California, where we were on the border of Oakland and Berkeley. And actually, funny fact, Too Short was just coming out. And Oakland was the murder capital of the United States at that time in 78. And so we left Berkeley. We had a 2-block street. Shattuck and Ashby was kind of our corner street. And then we lived on Emerson. Emerson was just 2 blocks long. And we had like 20 friends. And my dad's restaurant was on the corner of Shattuck and Emerson. And we played all day, every day. I mean, our number one sport was baseball, but we played football. We played basketball. We loved skateboarding was probably right up there with baseball, maybe even past it, and BMX. Mm-hmm. And then I was playing soccer. I just got on a soccer team. I just got on a hockey team. We were urban, just normal urban kids, just living it up. We had the most amazing little community. And then our mother, who was very, what's the word? She was free-spirited.
Yeah.
And she came back to Berkeley and said, we're moving to Hawaii. And she had already uprooted us many times. And there were always amazing experiences that definitely made us who we are and were very unconventional and totally different than your normal upbringing. But the last journey she brought us on was the Christ family. And we were just like, oh, no, we're good. We want to stay here, Mom. Then she said, we're going to Hawaii. We moved to Hawaii. So the funny thing is, my mom sewed up these outfits for us. We had orange velvet pants and orange velvet vest.
It was 78. It was 1978.
Shirts. It was like Jackson 5 meets the Partridge Family on steroids. It was out of control. And so we get to Hawaii, and where, he was a musician. So he was playing with Don Ho's daughter. I don't know if you know Don, but he's a very famous Hawaiian musician.
Oh, yeah.
And then shortly after, somehow the daughter or somebody interested him, and then he left. And so we're in the North Shore is an amazing place to be, but we're like in the armpit of the North Shore. It's called Cement City. It's where all the military people live and, people on welfare. Back then we had welfare. I'm not sure what they call it these days. So he left and we didn't have anything. Like, we were just stuck there. And my mom got us a surfboard.
Yeah.
And she found us actually I thought she found it in the bush. I thought we found it in my bushes. And my brother's like, no, Mom bought that for us at a yard sale. $15. And I'm like, okay. He has a good memory. I block a lot of that stuff out or choose not to remember. I don't know. That surfboard, shorts, all we knew was shorts and that surfboard, and we went surfing.
And y'all were sharing it.
Yes, sharing the board. But Liam didn't have any interest at first. I didn't have to share it because he was still really into baseball. And the baseball field was right next door to our house. Right. And he was the catcher, and he was number one every year. He was an all-star catcher. He was actually they were scouting him, and it was in elementary school. So it was like, and he would tease me, like, I'm going to be a pro baseball player and you're going to be a surf bum. And I'm just like, okay. And then I would be riding my bike or walking by the baseball field to go to the beach, and he'd be running around the field doing laps, sit-ups, and standing behind the plate.
Right.
So after a while, he kind of gravitated towards surfing.
Was there anything, I hear that and I think about, like, this is what popped to mind. I think about like Akeem Olajuwon, and how like he was so graceful because he had played soccer before he played basketball. So the footwork was crazy. Like, did any of the sports that you were playing back in Berkeley translate to any kind of innate, physical skill for being on a surfboard?
Definitely skateboarding. And that was kind of our baseball and skateboarding were our two favorites. And we felt like nowadays I look back on it and I go, wow, we were like the Dogtown guys in Berkeley. And I talked to not Jeff Ho, I think it might have been Reggie Barnes or one of the old timers. forget the guy's name, but they just finished the BART station in Berkeley, and we did a skate contest there. And we had our guys that were the guys. And then they came up from down south. And he told me, I won that contest at your BART station. So, yeah, skateboarding definitely transferred over into the surfing. And that was the only thing that enticed us. When my mother said we're moving to Hawaii, we went kicking and screaming, literally, before the outfits were made. We didn't want to go. Then the outfits were like, oh my God, what is this? We're walking through the airport. And she's all, they're surfing. It's just like skateboarding, but it's on the water. And we're like, all right. So when you fall, you won't hit the cement. Okay, that sounds good. That was the only thing that sounded good about moving to Hawaii.
Yeah. Yeah, because I know like when you grow up in an urban area, like you're playing football, tackle football on concrete, like
on the cement, on the asphalt. Cement.
Yeah, it's different. People don't know. People don't know, but you get like, you learn how to fall. You're like, let me bring my shoulder in a little bit so I don't break it.
Totally. We do. I know exactly what you're talking about.
So then, you picked it up, you kind of gravitated toward it. And then how did it blossom?
I was not very good, and I never saw it as a career. Never thought that I could be a pro because I started late. 11 is pretty late. Back then, there wasn't any contracts until you were actually a pro. I mean, you could get free gear, but that was it. You couldn't accept money. When I was 16 is when I fell in love with big waves, but I still wasn't, I just felt comfortable and felt like that was kind of more where I belonged in the small waves.
Yeah.
But I still didn't think it was a career. And then at 17, I was an August baby. So I was graduating when I was 17. And halfway through the year, I was really panicking. I was just terrified of graduating because I didn't know what I was going to do when I got out. And I didn't know what I was going to be. And I didn't go to school a lot. And we smoked a lot of joints. So we just smoked joints and tried to stay out of school as much as we could.
Was the weed better in Hawaii or in Berkeley?
The funniest thing is when we were in Berkeley, we were already smoking joints at like freaking 11. So yeah, the weed in Berkeley wasn't that good. Either we got it off the rooftops of a campus dorm or some apartment building that we climbed up a fire escape, or it was my dad's Colombian that had 1 million seeds in it. So we got to Hawaii and they had the real deal. So yeah, it was totally way better. That was before it got interesting.
Right.
So then, where was I going? What was it to?
So you hadn't been going to school much, and you weren't sure what you wanted to do when you got out, graduated.
I was getting C's and B's and maybe a couple C's, D's, couple B's, and a couple F's. And I at third quarter, I'm like, okay, if I get all F's from here on out, I can flunk. And I could stay in one more year, and I'll have one more year to figure it out. And I contemplated doing that. So when we're going to school, we're walking or riding the bus, and we go right to school and go left to the beach. And we went left a lot. So I said, okay, I'm going to go left every day. Right. Maybe, I don't know, I was thinking, but then my clothing sponsor, somebody was providing clothing for us, Surfers Alliance, Brandy Rarick. And he said, I'm going to put you in the Triple Crown. And I was like, oh, okay. So I got my boards ready. I got my head on and got my game plan and made it to the main event at the Pipe Masters and made it to the main event at the Sunset World Cup. And when you make it to the main event, you are offered a certain amount of, I only made it to the quarterfinals. So I won like $250 at each event. And gladly accepted the money and automatically became a pro.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about that. Was there like, because you said you couldn't accept, was there like a NCAA kind of like body around surfing that was controlling things?
Yeah, it was called the ASP. And it was, politics at its finest, like everything. They wouldn't let you accept any amount of money until you wanted to turn pro. And if you couldn't even get a contract that was paying you You couldn't accept money as a winning prize money. Those were the rules back then. Nowadays, you can have $1 million contract and not be pro at 13 years old if you're like the wonder kid.
Yeah, it's so crazy. I was watching. Are you a football fan?
I was. I mean, I had tickets to the Raiders Vikings when the Raiders won in 76, I think. No, 76. Yeah, 76.
Yeah.
And I had every baseball card, every football card, I was a freak. I mean, that's all we did was collect cards and big blue auto gum. I mean, you must be pretty young. How old are you? You have bubble gum and you didn't have bubble gum in your card.
I'm 46. So,
whoa.
I'm 46.
Okay.
Got my shoulder hurts right now. Yeah, big league chew and all that good stuff.
Yes, the big league chew.
Yeah. But it's funny because I was watching when you mentioned you couldn't take any money or anything. Like I saw the other day that the Colorado football team, coached by Deion Sanders now, at least on their practice jerseys, they have their social media handles on the back. So now, like if there's a camera on them, people can funnel, followers and whatever fans to their accounts and help them get NIL, contracts, which, look, I mean, you got 100,000 stadium, somebody's making a whole lot of money off of you. And it's an interesting thing to say you can only participate.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds like, were you like, even though you had this fork in the road and you were going left every day, right? Like, were you kind of like, were you like a big deal at that age? Like were you kind of like the man around town for what you were doing?
I was going left a lot until I received that check that made me automatic pro. And then I made sure I actually finished high school, graduated. And the funny thing is, for all those kids out there listening, the only thing, I haven't had many regrets. And I still don't like to have any regrets. But the one thing I would have liked to have focused more on is learning while I was in school. The one thing that I thought while I was in graduation, I'm like, man, I should have been studying more. There's nothing really better to be doing. Yeah. And I mean, yes, surfing got me where I am today. So maybe I took the right path, but no regrets. But big deal, no. I was not. I was maybe in my own mind, and I was a very focused individual so from 12 to 22, we surfed and had a great time, but we weren't real focused. From that day that I became professional at 17, I became a lot more focused. And then at 19, or was it 22? No, 22. I went to Japan at 22. And that's when I realized, I'm like, oh, okay, I can make something out of this. And I was still kind of nobody, but I was a big wave surfer, and the Japanese loved the big wave surfers, and I could speak Japanese. So I had all Japanese sponsors. I went to Japan for 10 years in a row. In Japan, that was a big deal. Around town on the North Shore, I wouldn't say it was a big deal. I would say I was one of the boys, and we had a great time, and we did what we did, and we all it was, North Shore was totally different back then. It was gnarly. It was all Hawaiians, and the lineups were, there was a pecking order. There was a guy, if you got in the wrong guy's way, or if you dropped into the wrong guy, you're getting sent to the beach, and you might even be getting sent to the airport. It was heavy.
Wow.
We were super lucky coming from Berkeley. We were chameleons. We were able to adapt from our childhood of so much weird, strange directions. Yeah. Somehow we're able to get along. And so we hung out with the boys. Those were our boys. The gnarliest guys on the North Shore were our guys. Those were our boys. But I wouldn't say that I was the guy ever, really. I was just on a different path. Kind of, I think I was a little more upbeat. Like we smoked our weed for years, but at 78, was it? No, 87. When it got interesting, when it started getting hydroponics and all that stuff, that's when I quit. And that's when I got super focused and didn't mess around anymore. I was like, boom, this is it. I'm taking this shit serious. I'm going to make something happen.
So God, man, I have like so many questions, but I want to try and keep it in order. But I will throw
Yeah,
this
and I
out.
tend to ramble. I'm sorry.
No, I love the ramble, because trust me, like I used to write out questions and I was like, I never stick to them. So this is going to be like a comparison, I guess, because at this time period that you're talking about right now, like what were like the logistics of you being a professional surfer then, versus now, as far as like equipment or like your team, because I have an idea, obviously, from watching 100-Foot Wave, where it's like you've got, these safety folks on jet skis, you've got a whole, it's really like a military operation to ensure that people come out of the water. You know what I mean? Like, and that also you can get out to the wave. But like, what was it like back then, if you could compare?
So when we began, there was no money. A couple guys made money, like Tom Curran and Aki and a few other guys, survived. If they had a little niche, they carved something out to where they had longevity, but mostly everybody was here today, gone tomorrow. And the blue-eyed, blonde-haired kid was coming in when you're going out, the young guy. And it was a different world. You weren't allowed, it wasn't cool to promote yourself. It wasn't cool to have your name or your face on anything that you created yourself. Now, if your sponsors did it, then that was fine. If the magazines publicized you, that was great. But there was no like me, I, and there was no like talking about yourself. It was more core and rootsy and spiritual. Spiritual at its core, it was spiritual, but it was a little more than that. It was just not cool. And then the sponsors came in. I was lucky. I was in Japan for the first 10 years. I had all Japanese companies. They respected the big wave riders, and they all come to Hawaii. So we had all these Japanese friends, and then we had all these Japanese sponsors, and we would go to Japan. We'd have the time of our life. Everybody else who had to go to Japan for the contest really was miserable because they stayed in their hotel room. They ate Simon at 7-Eleven. We got treated like kings. I mean, everyone else got treated like kings too, but they didn't know, didn't have friends. You just had their sponsor who would take care of them and put them at their hotel. And so we had a great time with our Japanese experience, and the big wave surfing with speaking Japanese gave us those 10 years. And then I got injured really bad and almost disappeared, but then came back. And then I got sponsored by a Brazilian company. The biggest company in Brazil was Bad Boy, was #1 biggest company in Brazil at the time. And I was best friends with the owner. And I would go to Brazil every year. And in Japan, there was billboards in Tokyo and this and that and ads in every magazine.
Yeah.
And then in Brazil, the same thing. I come out of the airport, there I am, and the freaking billboard, and then another billboard in Sao Paulo, and every magazine ads. I don't know. I got super lucky. I was definitely not the most talented, but I was super focused, and I created really good relationships, and I did my best at carving out my niche in big waves. And then it all kind of fizzled when I started a store, and it was pretty depressing, and I was like, okay, I got to figure out how to give surfing one more try. And that's when I wrote my first business plan, how to keep surfing. And I made a goal and then a map to the goal. And as long as that goal, the map is realistic, the blueprint, the map is a realistic blueprint and map to achieve that goal, then it can happen pretty easily. But you got to have a realistic goal and a realistic plan. And so with that plan, then boom, back to surfing. And here I am still. And I was at, what was I, 35 or something? Yeah.
Yeah. What made you start the store?
The store, I was actually 40. I had 3 children, and I figured I had to provide and do the normal day-to-day, what everybody does, what everybody thinks they got to do.
There's an interesting similarity, I think, in what we both do, in the sense of like, the director on 100-Foot Wave did that doc American Movie. And if you've seen that, it's about a guy who's like, so, I mean, that's a different case, I hope, than myself, but like so committed to this goal, to this dream, that everything else it becomes secondary. And as you get older, like I didn't do my first episode of TV until I was 40, and it took like 15 years of trying to like just knock on doors, break through, build relationships like you talk about. And you're constantly up against the grind of like, where should I be? What should I be doing? But that thing just keeps knocking on your door and calling you, and you gotta answer it.
What was the secret to your success? What do you feel?
Man,
is there some pivotal moment or a way of being? Or
there is, I kind of pinpointed to, there was a particular moment in time where I just said I have to take my expectations out of the equation, because in the world of like, film and TV, you can kind of buy into these milestones opening particular doors. And for myself, I had met kind of every milestone that had been told or communicated to me as would be like, and now it should happen. And because those things weren't happening, and then it can get like, it gets real specific too, just being a Black dude trying to break into the business. Like, I made independent films where I raised like $500,000, and it was like a tree falling in a forest that nobody heard. And, with people who are, going on to be huge stars. And so when I took the expectation off of each film that I made, the byproduct of that was that I was no longer bitter, because there was a bitterness underneath that I wasn't really acknowledging. And I had a couple people check me on it when I would talk about things. And I was like, oh shit, I do sound bitter. And you know why? Because I am. And so I let that go. And like, it really changed my interactions with people. And it changed my connection to what I was doing. You know what I mean?
Give me a little chicken skin right there, just because we feed it. If we're feeding it, you know?
Yeah,
right?
It's the zone, right? It's like, I imagine, I know one of the things I take away from watching the documentary is like, there's this feeling of being at one with yourself when you are in that zone on a wave that like you just want to replicate it. You'll spend your whole fucking life trying to replicate it and doing these things to find it. And it's like, there's a moment in the documentary where I think you were, I forget where you were, but I think you were like, you said you closed your eyes and you opened them back, and you kind of went to a place to be grateful and be at peace, and you opened your eyes and then you were ready, and it's like, how can we do that every day, every moment?
It's tough. So tough. And we know that we can if we choose to, but we don't, because have all these challenges all day long. We're conditioned, and we're just trying to, we're learning these amazing ways of being, and we want to be what we know we can be, but it's hard.
Right.
Chef.
But we're often our biggest opponent, and in our own way.
Self-sabotage.
Yeah. So but that's amazing, man. Like I tip my hat, because we have a daughter, and we had her when I was 44, but it was different. I had finally found my footing. You know what I mean? Like, to be 35 with 3 kids, right? You said 3 kids at the time?
Yeah. Well, I had 2. The third one came after about 40.
Okay. Yeah. So like that thing, the water was calling you clearly.
Yes.
And so coming out of that, that's where you had the plan, and it was like, I'm going to read. Let me ask you, was it about redefining what surfing could be?
It was more about, the goal for me was always to keep surfing, just to be able to be in the water and not do a 9 to 5. And I didn't have that goal up until I opened the store. till I opened the store, I always thought, okay, I got to surf all the way till now. I got all these years of surfing. I could be happy doing a 9 to 5, no problem. I'm so grateful for what I've already achieved, what I've already been able to experience and not have to go to work, self-employed in the water. I mean, come on. And but then once I was in that store, it wasn't that fun. Especially driving by perfect waves,
Right.
I enjoyed it for a bit, and the store was doing good. I had my little niche. I was the only guy who had bad boy clothing on the island, so all the fighters were coming, and all the people who knew what it was. A lot of people knew. So, but it just, it wasn't much fun sitting behind that register and telling stories of the tales of the ocean. Tales of the last wave.
were you becoming like, were you like the guy that people sought out, to, rub the log and get the wisdom, like were folks coming only for the store, or were they coming to kind of rub shoulders with you and get some of your, tips and tricks?
I don't know. I love hanging out and talking stories. So I think they were more coming for whatever I had to sell, but I'm sure once we got to know each other, whoever came in, and there was people that were like, oh my God, but it was more just for what I had. And then I did make some good friends there, and I did have some fun times talking story, but I don't know. That's a good question. There was a few kids from California, a few from, I guess there was a few people here and there. I didn't really ever feel like I was anything special, and didn't feel like I could be the guy that rubs the board and send them on their way. But I don't know. That's a totally different question I've ever been faced with. And I mean, we did have some really good relationships with some really special people from all over the world that definitely came for advice and came for, the right, I think there was a little bit of that for sure that I didn't feel worthy of, maybe.
That's interesting. Why do you think that?
I don't know. I never really won any big events. I wasn't like the best guy. I was right there, always just chomping at the bit, trying to get somewhere in my career and just making it. I was always just making it. I was never at the top. So I don't think I ever felt worthy to be that guy.
Is there, for you personally, was there an aspect of like, was it only about competing against yourself, or was there ever any like, I'm better than these dudes? Like, let me show them how it's done.
I was just super hungry and focused and had to make something happen every year to be able to retain my sponsors, to find, it's usually yearly contracts. I didn't have many 3-year contracts. Every year you had to do something, or you might not even be making any money the next year. And you had to be relevant. You had to be in the limelight. And I was really determined to get the best wave of the day. Once from about the toe surfing, I really excelled in toe surfing. I love toe surfing. I love the team aspect. I love putting my partner on waves, being responsible for somebody. And then I loved choosing really good partners that I know are the best watermen around, that I know that like Ikaika and Rodrigo and KLE and Cody. I just loved being a part of a team, but also knowing what I'm going after, knowing that my guy can get me what I want and I can give him what he wants. And together we can excel in any situation on any given day.
Right.
And to be able to keep doing it, you had to get the wave of the day, or at least get the wipeout of the day, or get something that everybody's going to go, holy shit, there he is again. And it's funny for me, they always, I don't know, nobody ever said this to me, but I feel like every year, every other year, every 5 years. Oh, nothing else he can do. He's done. Here I am, I'm 56, and there's still more coming.
Yeah, I love it.
It's always about, I guess there's probably a couple times I a little bit of really reinvented myself, knowing, okay, this is what I'm doing. I'm reinventing. I'm doing this.
Right.
But usually, it was usually just all natural.
Right. Here's maybe the simplest question of the day before we get into 100-foot wave a little more specifically. Like, how do you, when you're out there, what are you looking at to identify a good wave?
Well, back in the day, we would always want the biggest, best wave of the day. And we'd look at the swell, the forecast ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
So you look at the tide and when the swell's arriving and when high tide hits, because the biggest wave of the day usually comes at high tide on the massive swells. So you time it to where you know what time you want to be on the rope. So you want to be on the rope at least a half hour, if not an hour before that wave, probably a half hour, because your partner might want to get on the rope. So It's like, okay, who's going to be on the rope? Who was studying? Who's like, okay, these days it's before it was the biggest, best wave, hopefully barrel. But as long as the biggest wave, that was the wave that everybody talks about at the end of the day. Who got the bomb? Who got the bomb? Who got the bomb? So we're always going for the bomb. And nowadays, it's more of the best wave. And for me, the best wave is getting barreled and riding the best you can. Or that was actually the last, before I got hurt in 16. And then since 16 to now, it's been more about, I used to put it all on the line every wave. It didn't matter if I was going to make it or not. I always wanted to make the wave, and I always did my best to make the wave, but I was going to put it all on the line to get the ultimate ride, get as deep as humanly possible and make it. And if I didn't, that was just fine, because I'd have an amazing experience while I'm getting pounded. And then since the injury, I've been like, okay, I'm a little more, we're definitely patient, a lot more patient. I don't have to ride every wave anymore. I don't have to be on any. Back in the day, I had to be on every swell. If I didn't go to the swell of the year at Tahiti, and I had the means to get there, and I said, oh no, I'm not, decided not to for some reason, or I had a trade show and I committed to, and I said, okay, I'll stay at the show instead of running to the swell, I would be on suicide. I would literally on suicide watch if I missed the swell of the year. And nowadays, I'm fine right here in Malmo. The swell can be going off anywhere in the world. I mean, I used to look at Japan, Australia, Chile, Peru, you name it. I was monitoring the swells all summer and all winter, and wanted to be on the biggest, best days of the year to keep that paycheck coming in, and to keep the stoke, to keep getting the rush, to keep having fun and new experiences.
What's up? This is Reggie Rock Fife with Creative Swagger, and you're listening to Let's Shoot with Pete Chapman.
Transitions, a director's journey and motivational handbook, is Pete Chapman's book from Michael Weezy Productions. The reviews are in. Greg Berlanti says, there's a reason why everyone who works with Pete falls in love with his work. The lessons he imparts here are invaluable. Do yourself a favor and read it cover to cover. From Sarah Gamble, Pete's sharing gold nuggets that will spare you a ton of wasted time and help you channel your drive, talent, and ambition in the most productive way. And from Jesse Williams, this business has everything to do with preparation and expectations. Transitions grounds lessons in reality while empowering our artistry to run free. Not an easy balance to execute. Transitions, a director's journey and motivational handbook, is available on Amazon and anywhere else you get your books. Don't forget about your mom and pop shops, people.
So how did the series come together? Did you put together a pitch for that? Did HBO come to you? Like, what was the genesis of the 100-foot wave?
My wife wrote a 1-pager, maybe it was 3 pages, basically just a little treatment for the series. For it was actually supposed to be a 1.5-hour movie, and her goal was to win an Oscar. And she shoots for the stars if she can do anything. And she's like, hey, we're going to make this story about the human spirit. You broke your shoulder. Cody broke his back. CJ broke his back. You guys, 3 guys were told to never go surf again. And you guys are all back. So we're going to do this movie on that and the human spirit. And we're going to inspire the world that everything's possible. And that's the goal. And then we sent it. Okay, my wife's cousin is Yada, who is Joe Lewis's wife. Joe Lewis was the senior. He was Amazon TV, co-founder of Amazon TV.
Okay.
And scripted and comedy. And then we reached out to Yada. We're like, Yada, we got this thing. We're wondering what to do. Can we show it? Can you maybe show it to Joe? We didn't really know Joe. And she's like, oh, yeah, but he just stepped down from Amazon. He does his own thing. But okay, maybe he'll look at it. And then we got it to Joe, and he looked at it. And then he took a call with us. And he's like, man, this is good. We didn't tell him we wanted to win an Oscar. He goes, this can win an Oscar. That's what he told Nicole straight up, without us knowing that that's what she wants to do.
Right.
And then she's like, ooh. And he's like, and he wasn't pushy. He was real, like, it was really interesting that he didn't like come in, okay, I'll do this for you. It was like, if you need any help, I'll help push it in the right direction. And then somehow the conversation went on, and my wife's just like, here, you take it, run.
Right.
And she was going to do it guerrilla, like with some Portuguese company. That's what we loved. We loved the Portuguese company, but it was, wasn't Joe Lewis and it wasn't Chris Smith. And then we kept telling them, we have a hard drive that has like the first 3 years, a lot of footage. We kept telling them, so we got this hard drive. And then we were having a hard time getting it from the guy who shot it. And then finally we got on the hard drive, and they're like, this is a docu-series. This isn't a 1.5 hour movie. And my wife said, fuck that. I don't want no fun. She didn't want no time. Joe's like, oh no, but we can win an Emmy. So I don't want an Oscar. She was pissed. She was bad. It was funny. And I'm like, I'm seeing the light, I'm going, okay, this can carry on. This has legs. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
It sounds good. Let's do it. And so we did it. And yeah, here we are, nominated for 6 Emmys. And like, what the hell? She's very proud. She's happy, and she's really happy with it. But I mean, but we're actually in talks. I've talked to a lot of people, a lot of high up, and I'm talking about doing a scripted movie on my life, and everybody wants to do it. And it'll be kind of like, because the childhood was so gnarly and dark, and I want to focus more on that, and then the ta-da with the meeting Nicole in the end, and not that much surfing, and more of doesn't matter where you start, and everything's possible, and doesn't matter what you go through in life, everything's possible, and I think it's gonna. I mean, it'll take a little time, but we got the book already. The book is G-rated to the maximum. They pulled so much stuff. I'm like, let's put this, let's put that. No. My wife wouldn't let me veto, and then the publisher no veto, and all this other. I mean, I was like, let's call it Watermelon Seeds on my Ding Dong, because that's all I remember from my childhood, running around. But I don't know. Maybe she'll get her an Oscar someday.
Well, I mean, it's amazing. I can imagine the experience they had looking at this 3 years of footage on a hard drive, because, B-roll, right? Any interviews, part of that, or just like documenting the process of getting that system up and running?
There wasn't like straightforward interviews, but there was a lot of lead-ins and lead-outs. I had been filming a lot with a lot of different crews with a lot of different projects. So I was really comfortable with the camera. It was like a friend, and my best friend was holding the camera. And I loved the guy, and George Leal Jesus, he was just incredible. And so we filmed a lot. I mean, they got the hard drive, and they had their guys go through it as, they do when you got a big production like this. They didn't even see anything. So they have these, I don't know, 1, 2, maybe 3 different 4 different editors from HBO, and then they throw together whatever they think are the stories. And we could have had 3 seasons from what was on that hard drive, because there were so many crazy things that happened in those first 3 years. I mean, there was my friend from Malibu who can barely surf. He says, I told him, come on over. I told these guys, come. Nobody comes. The Malibu Mike, he's like 60. He comes. He gets pounded on Shorebreak. He was the most hilarious guy. Yes. And then we're taking the jet skis out at night and trying to get back in at night. We had 3 people. I mean, there were some craziest things that we captured that never made it to the light. That still happens today. You know, there's so many things. We shoot all this footage, and it goes to these 4 different editors who don't know us or don't know anything about anything. And they capture and log and write these stories. And then they get it to the other editor, who then really does it, and then they get it to Chris. So, and then we tried. Luckily, they throw everything at us and fact check it all, and then we're like, we're always making these suggestions.
You'll be like, hey, I remember there was this moment in that thing that you don't have in there, and I know it because it's on the 3rd camera, and that whole deal,
And it's amazing. And they're incredible storytellers, and they're an incredible team. And I am so grateful, but it is very challenging to see the things that slip through the cracks.
And from what I see from our research, you've directed 2 different films, the North Canyon and GMAC Big Wave Attack North Canyon.
There was North Canyon project was, we did Nazare Calling, and we did one other one. Nazare Calling was really good. It's actually online on some random guy put it up, and they ripped out the music because they don't have the rights to it, even though we do. So it's a really poor representation of what we did. And we won awards with it. It was a really good movie. And when they first sent me the first pass of season 1, and I was like, this sucks. What are you guys doing? Because our movie makes you cry. You feel it and you cry. Right? And I'm looking at it, comparing it to the movie. I'm just like, it just got better and better. But it still, to me, was like nothing compared to the movie. There was no like climax. In our movie, there was a climax. And I was like, where's the climax? Or, no, this is a docuseries. We got to keep it going. I'm like, oh, okay.
Was it hard for you to separate having directed to being like a featured, subject in this series? Or did you kind of work with Chris at all and kind of share your thoughts on how this might be realized as a series?
We were super lucky because the script that Nicole wrote was in those hard drives. It's been challenging to release all control of what you're being portrayed as and all the storytelling. And when it comes to me and how they portray me, I've just come to the realization and I accept that if I did it, I did it. And that's it. That was me. Bottom line. So I can't complain. But when it comes to the storytelling and the other characters, and it's a little challenging because we want to do stuff to make a difference, or we don't want to do it at all. And if it's not inspiring, it's not making a difference, there is no reason to be wasting any time on this. And luckily, the characters that they have woven in either are inspiring or somehow complement the stories or complement what we're doing or what somebody else is doing. And everything weaves together really well. We don't agree with all of it, but it's, they're smart. They know what they're doing. They know TV, and it's working. So we're fully vested in everything that's going on. But as far as letting go control, definitely challenging. My wife and I are both somewhat control freaks, and we're we're always working on not being control freaks. And my wife is actually doing really good at it these days. I'm still having a little bit of a hard time.
Well, it seems like you got great partners on it because it's really masterfully put together, and the characters are clear where you kind of get a sense of like, I see who this or who they're presenting this person to be, but I also understand what it's doing for the narrative, and then it pays off in really unique ways. I mean, even like CJ's story and, the way that kind of, those last few episodes of season 2 are kind of poetic, and even the conclusion of the final images of, is it Barrel on the surfboard at the end? Like,
yeah.
Cut with you, like, that's just beautiful stuff, man. Like, and the cyclicalness of it is great.
Yeah, Chris Smith was beyond himself when he got to start that episode with Tony's sister passing and then Faye being born. And that happened last minute because they didn't realize that was surfing for Faye. And they had that way early to get it. And they didn't realize that there was a lot of, like you said, that camera on that time, they didn't have any of the Nicole Burst stuff. They had nothing. And we were like, come on. And then finally Chris was like, well, we're missing all that. Is there any times or dates or cameras that you can know about? And Nicole's like, this camera, this time, this date, and boom. And then Chris just went, and was like almost past deadline. And Chris went in and then he's like, it's my favorite. He was so happy. And we were so happy. Chris is a magician, and Joe Lewis is just a magic man. With anything, any challenge that comes at him, he just so calmly navigates everybody and everything. And then Zach, who's right hand to Chris, is just amazing. I did Last Dance that's where he got his thing.
Yeah,
and then the topic people and the HBO. I mean, it's the powerhouse team behind this whole thing is a bunch of really amazing women,
right?
The HBO crew, topic, and then we got us guys just working.
Yeah. I mean, look, man. Every time I hear those waves crashing, and I'm like, I guess it's too late for me.
Nah, we can get you out there. We can, one of these days we can get you out there in Hawaii or Nazaré on the jet ski, and even surfing. You would be surfing first wave. When I take people surfing who are a little worried or a little hesitant, I give them the perfect board and take them to the perfect spot, which is a small wave with a sandy bottom. And you surf.
Is it a longer board that's better for a beginner? Yeah.
A stand-up.
Okay.
First start on like a 10 to 12-foot stand-up board. Catch a few waves, get your paddle, get your style. And with me running right there or surfing right next, evaluating, sharing, do this, do that.
Right.
And then you go to where you want to go. But you make sure that first experience is the best experience ever.
Right. So you don't have nightmares about it.
Yeah.
So if there's like, like I kind of started at the beginning of like, let's feel free to go tangential or whatever. Like, is there anything about this series that you wanted to share that has never kind of come up, whether by question or just not enough time to talk about it, that you want to say here?
Well, none of this would have happened without Nicole, because she was the one who answered the email, and then she was the one who wrote the script. The email, we wouldn't have went to Portugal if it wasn't for Nicole. And the women of Nazaré are the backbone and the heartbeat of Nazaré. And I feel like Nicole is one of them and brought all this amazing opportunities to the town and to the country through answering this email, through getting us there. And then, we pretty much succeeded and hit the home run out of the gate with the BBCs and the CNNs and the ESPN, and then the social media came in. So there's no stopping this media machine that's focusing on Portugal. But this HBO thing, I didn't think there was anything more that we really needed to do or anything that was really going to make a difference. But Chris Smith, Joe Lewis Topic, and HBO have shined so much light on Portugal as a whole through Nazare. And it's a tough one. You got all these new opportunities, all these new business possibilities, all these new influx of tourists.
Right.
Unheard of amount of tourists in the wintertime and now in the summer. And it's a double-edged sword. The people want, we want people, we want tourists, we want business, we want new opportunities. But then it comes and all of a sudden the prices go up. And so it's a kind of like a be careful what you ask for and plan ahead and be ready. And it's really beautiful because so many people have so many new opportunities that they would have never had. And especially the young people of Portugal can now stay in Portugal and don't have to leave to figure out, to find what they're looking for. And it's right there in their home country.
That's beautiful. Well, I call this rounding third, bringing it home. I ask everybody, like whether actor, director, producer, cinematographer, like what are 3 characteristics that they find are necessary to make it in the business? And I don't know if I need to edit that and make it more specific, like, to 3 characteristics you need to make it as a surfer. But yeah, maybe I'll pose it to you like that. What are 3 characteristics that you find are necessary to make it and survive and thrive as a surfer?
Well, first you got to really want it. If you want it, then you got to make sure that all of the things you need to be doing to achieve being a surfer, whether big wave or small wave, you got to reach full potential in your endeavors, in whether it's your training or your eating or your surf routine or whatever it is. You got to make sure you're reaching full potential. And then you got to carve out your niche. With no niche, there's no guarantee of longevity. But if you have a niche, you can be around forever. You can go through all the different eras of your career that were your last, and then you can bring it further, and then you can bring it further, and you can bring it further as long as you have a niche in your world, whatever your world is. And it can be any. If you have that niche, you're special and unique. And we all have this unique gift, and we can all do something better than everybody else because we all do it in our own unique way. Whether you think this guy's better than you or not, you're going to do it in your new unique way. And that's your special superpower that is your gift. And it's up to us to share it with our family, with our friends, and the world, and have longevity in our careers.
Awesome. Man, anything else you want to add that I haven't asked you?
It's never too early and it's never too late. Write that goal, make that map, and live your dream.
I love it. Well,
Selfless component is huge. Some way, shape, or form giving back. And then you really can't fail.
Yeah.
And you feel whole. Yeah.
Well, look, I feel like you've given back on this one, just tapping my shoulder. And then now we're here chatting, man. It's a pleasure to rap with you and get a little bit of an insight into your mind and the journey. And I appreciate you, brother.
I appreciate you too. Thank you for the interest.
What's up, people? This is Pete Chatmon. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter via @PeteChatmon. Follow the pod on IG via @Let'sShootWithPeteChatmon, and hit up our mailbag with questions, suggestions, or hey, donations if you're feeling like it via let'sshootwithpetechapman@gmail.com. And just in case you need to know how to spell it, that's Pete with the last name CHATMON. Let's Shoot with Pete Chatmon is produced and edited by the multi-talented cut creator Tristan Nash. assistant produced by the young mogul Jada George, and features the wonderfully gifted Kelly McCreary as our announcer. It's written by yours truly, but I mostly come up with these questions on the fly, which you've probably noticed. Let's Shoot with Pete Chatmon is sponsored by Sweat Equity, so go ahead and get your podcast swag via PeteChatmon.com and leave a review on iTunes if so inclined. That shit matters. All right, y'all. That was Mr. Garrett McNamara on episode 53 of Let's Shoot with Pete Chatmon. Just want to thank him again for taking the time out of his day across international borders to hop on the phone with me and bring that conversation to y'all. Next week, we welcome Ms. Anya Adams, a friend of mine, really great director. You will have hopefully seen her work in season 2 of Yellow Jackets. She's doing feature films. She's killing the game. And she's also the governor of the TV directing peer group for the Television Academy, which I'm on that committee as well. So I've gotten to see her leadership in different ways. And I've also had the pleasure, at least late in the journey, of seeing her transition from an AD when I met her back in 2017 on Blackish when I was shadowing director Linda Mendoza, and into all the things that Anya is doing now. So tune in next week, y'all. And in the meantime, you know what I'm going to say. Stay safe, spread love, and keep creating.